Ambassador Baucus, welcome back to Hong Kong. This meeting with President Xi Jinping was by no means guaranteed. Were you surprised that they met? And what did you think of the first outcomes of that?
Well, I was not surprised because I think that both countries are now doing their very best to try to reset the relationship, trying to get it a little more stable, trying to prevent any downward spiral. I thought it's a good, decent chance that he will, because it's an opportunity for President Xi to signal to the world, not only to the United States and to China, but to the world that President Xi really wants this relationship to work. So I was not surprised.
The Secretary of State spoke about Taiwan. In effect, he says the US does not support Taiwan independence and remains opposed to any unilateral change to the status quo by either side. That was a very, very full statement on the back of months and years of uncertainty about whether America is swerving more to a different side. What were your thoughts on that?
He had to say that. There's no question. That's American policy, so we had to say it. I'm not surprised he said it. The real question, though, is what follows. Will the U.S. take action, or particularly will the Congress undertake any action? Will there be visits by members of Congress to Taiwan, for example, which tend to undermine those words? It's really, in life, deeds are often more important than the words, and that's certainly true in this case. China feels that although the U.S. is honoring the One China policy and the Shanghai Communique and the assurances in principle, the United States is not really honoring it in practice. And I think the real question is, going forward, will the United States honor it in practice as well as in principle? And that's the real question. I think, frankly, that Americans do not fully understand that Taiwan is existential. It's non-negotiable. In China's view, Taiwan is part of China, and the Chinese live in Taiwan. It's part of China. And I don't think Americans understand the communiques. They don't understand the history well enough to know how important Taiwan is to China. So, but I think they're learning. My sense is that during this visit, Wang Yi certainly made that very clear to Blinken that, hey, don't fool around with Taiwan. This is Chinese. I think the Americans got that message. I hope so.
You mentioned Wang Yi, Anthony Blinken, Joe Biden, of course, President Xi Jinping. I mean, you've met and worked and interacted with all of these figures individually. What would you tell them now about getting back and using this new momentum to get back to a more stable dynamic?
There are several things since Bali, and when things went downhill after Bali, that both sides realized, hey, we got to do something about that, because we don't want things to go downhill after Bali. So from going forward, there are a couple things. Number one, neither side should publicly criticize the other, because whenever you criticize somebody, it's counterproductive. Rather, if we have a message to give, United States to China, or China to the United States, if it's sensitive, do it privately. Not publicly, but privately. But be very clear about it, very firm about it. But sometimes you have to go public, but first begin privately, and then say, hey, if we don't see any action here, we may have to be public about it. Show respect, and let the other side save face by being private. Second, after the words, don't do anything that upsets the words. Don't do anything that upsets the nice sounding agreements that came out of these meetings. And so we'll see. That's going to requires great discipline on the part of both sides, because when Secretary Blinken goes back to the United States, my gosh, he's back in the United States. He has to worry about everything else in the State Department, every other problem in the world, and in the politics in the United States and so forth. And to some degree, President Xi, after meeting with Blinken, is going to have to, he's going to go back and do his usual work, BRI, travel around the world and whatnot. So it's going to require great discipline on the part of China and the part of the United States to not take any actions that are adverse to what they agreed to, and that's going to take a lot of effort, because otherwise there's a decent chance that something untoward is going to happen.